Picture this: a gold badge lying face up on the scorching hood of a police cruiser on a two-lane Alabama road where the heat comes off the asphalt in visible waves and the afternoon feels like it has been going on forever and has no plans to stop. The badge is catching the sun and throwing it back, the eagle spread wide across the top. The letters D.O.J. pressed deep into solid brass, the kind of weight and detail that doesn't come from a costume shop or a novelty catalog or anywhere except the place it actually came from. This badge is real, and anyone who has ever held one knows it the moment their fingers close around it. The man holding it right now has never held one before. He is a heavy-set white cop in a uniform that stopped fitting him comfortably a few years ago, and the expression on his face is the expression of a man watching the floor give way beneath him, not dramatically, not all at once, but in the slow, nauseating way of something that was always going to happen and simply waited for the right Tuesday afternoon to begin. Somewhere behind him, leaning against the rear quarter panel of a $90,000 Range Rover, with his broad hands resting easy on the hot metal and his face turned slightly toward the tree line, is the man whose badge this is. He is not yelling. He is not struggling. He is not doing anything not struggling. He is not doing anything that looks like fear, because fear is not what this is. What this is patience. The particular practiced patience of someone who knew exactly how this story was going to end before it even started and simply waited for the other man to figure it out. This happened on a Tuesday in Millhaven, Alabama. By Friday, an entire town's power structure was rubble. What kind of man stays that calm when everything appears to be going wrong? The kind who knows it isn't. Millhaven, Alabama smells like burnt asphalt and somebody's grandmother's cooking and the particular kind of exhaust that only comes from trucks that should have been retired a decade ago and weren't, because nobody around here throws anything away until it completely stops moving. It is the kind of town where you can drive through in 11 minutes if you hit the light on Main Street right, and most people passing through do exactly that. They drive through. They don't stop. They don't look too hard at what's behind the Dollar General or what's on the other side of the railroad tracks. The courthouse clock hasn't worked since 2009, and nobody has fixed it, not because nobody noticed, but because nobody particularly needed to. Time in Millhaven runs on its own internal logic. The diner opens when Patty feels like opening it. The hardware store closes whenever Raymond's back gives out. And the police department, all 11 officers of it, collectively carrying more excessive force complaints than the city of Birmingham, operates on a schedule that has more to do with who needs what done and who's owed what favor than anything written in the municipal code. On the west side of the railroad tracks, streets are paved smooth, and the streetlights come on at dusk without being asked. On the east side, where most of Millhaven's black families have lived for 3 generations and will live for 3 more, the streets are patched asphalt over gravel over nothing, and the streetlights flicker when they work at all, and the ones that don't work have been reported so many times that people stopped reporting them and just learned to drive by memory and instinct and the particular knowledge that comes from living in a place long enough to know its dark spots. Standing at the main highway intersection large enough to block the morning sun from the Sunoco station entirely is a billboard. White background, blue letters, the face of a silver-haired man who looks like he was assembled specifically to inspire confidence in frightened people. Whitmore and Associates hurt in an accident, we fight for you. Gerald Whitmore has been fighting for people for 22 years. He is very skilled at it. What he actually fights for specifically and precisely is a story we will come back to. Troy Lassiter is parked in the gravel pullout directly behind that billboard, which means every single day of his working life, he sits in the shadow of Gerald Whitmore's face, and he has never once found this funny or strange or worth a single moment of reflection. He is 47 years old, and he looks it in the specific way that men look their age when they have been angry for a long time, and that anger has been the primary expression their face makes the muscles settling into whatever shape they've practiced most. And Troy's face has been practicing a version of contempt since roughly the mid-90s. He has a thick neck gone soft at the collar, hands that are large and never quite still, a wedding ring that stopped fitting around 2017 and lives in the glove compartment now next to a half-eaten roll of Tums and a gas station receipt he'll never throw away. Every morning before Troy does anything else, before the coffee, before the radio, before he pulls out of his driveway, he takes his badge off his chest and polishes it with the corner of his uniform shirt. It takes maybe 30 seconds, 40 at most, but it is deliberate and daily, and it tells you something essential about the relationship between this man and that piece of metal. He holds it up afterward and checks his reflection in it. Hat straight, collar flat, badge shining back at him with the face of a man who has decided he is the most important thing in any room he enters. Then he pins it back and goes to work. 22 years on the force in Millhaven. Never promoted past patrolman, which Troy tells himself is because he doesn't want the desk work and the politics, and which is actually because Chief Dale Pruitt has kept him exactly where he's useful on the road, moving, making stops, his particular instincts off-leash and pointed at traffic coming through from the interstate. Troy believes he is the hammer. He has never been told he is the handle. He shifts in his seat, finishes the last of a sweet tea that stopped being cold an hour ago, and watches the highway with the restless, ranging attention of a man whose boredom has real teeth. The way it works is not complicated, and that simplicity is precisely why it has survived for so long without anyone from outside coming to look at it. Troy makes a stop. It doesn't need to be a legitimate stop. It just needs to be a stop with a person on the shoulder of the road and Troy standing over them with the full institutional weight of the badge and the cruiser and the county and 22 years of precedent behind him. The person is scared, always confused, always off balance, always operating in a system they don't know the rules of, while Troy knows every rule and every exception, and which rules bend and which ones don't, and exactly how to use that gap. By the time Troy is done, whether he finds something real or manufactures something workable, the person is shaken enough and disoriented enough that they don't know what to do next. That is when the Whitmore representative appears not at the roadside. They're smarter than that, but later at the jail or in a phone call or through a cousin who happens to know a guy. Gerald Whitmore's firm specializes in exactly this: frightened people who have been through something they don't understand and need someone to fight for them. The firm files the city settles quietly to avoid discovery. The money moves through a series of steps that are individually defensible and collectively criminal. And eventually, a white envelope appears in Troy's locker every 2 weeks. Above Troy, Gerald Whitmore, who provides the legal structure. Judge Carl Stoneham, who signs the warrants without reading them and looks away from procedural problems the way you look away from something on the road you don't want to identify. Mayor Bobby Teague, who controls the oversight board that controls the complaint process and has been controlling it in Whitmore's direction since 2004. 8 months ago, a black man named Leroy Simmons had his landscaping truck seized by Troy Lassiter following a stop for erratic driving on a road Leroy had driven every single day for 11 years. The truck had his company name on the door and his grandfather's name painted carefully on the tailgate in block letters. It never came back. Leroy got a Whitmore business card and a shrug and an empty space in his driveway where his livelihood used to be. Leroy Simmons is not a major character in this story. He is what the story is about. The air conditioning inside the Range Rover is set to 68 degrees, which means the interior is a genuinely different world from the Alabama afternoon outside cooler, quieter, sealed off from the heat pressing down on everything beyond the glass. A podcast plays softly through the speakers. Something about wrongful convictions in the Georgia prison system. The host's voice measured and unhurried. Neither person in the car is fully listening to it. They both already know this kind of story from the inside. Marcus Beaumont drives with one hand on the wheel at the 9 o'clock position, spine straight without being stiff, shoulders relaxed without being slack. the posture of someone who has been trained to maintain physical calm in situations that would make other people's hands shake, and who has been in enough of those situations that the calm stopped being training a long time ago and became simply the way he carries himself through the world. He is 48 years old, broad across the shoulders with a face that colleagues have described accurately as a negotiation. Not unfriendly, not warm, just present in a way that fills whatever space he's in without demanding anything from it in return. His left hand carries a faint scar across the middle knuckle, a remnant from 2011 that he doesn't discuss and that Diane has never asked about because she was there. Diane Beaumont is in the passenger seat with a legal pad on her knee and 3 different colored pens working across it, making notes in the fast, compressed handwriting of someone who thinks faster than she writes and finds the gap irritating. She is 45, sharp-featured hair pulled back in a bun that took 30 seconds and hasn't been thought about since. The blazer she's wearing cost $800, and she bought it at an Atlanta Goodwill 2 years ago because Diane doesn't care about things. She cares about outcomes, which is why she turned down 3 federal judgeships to stay in the fight rather than sit above it. They are siblings. They are also professional partners and have been for most of their adult lives, which means their communication has compressed into something very close to shorthand. She starts a legal citation and he finishes it. He describes a fact pattern and she already has the precedent. 20 years of working the same side of the same cases will do that to 2 people who were already fluent in each other from childhood. They are heading to Millhaven to meet a confidential informant who has been feeding them evidence for 4 months. Someone inside the police department itself, someone who got tired of watching and finally decided to do something about what they'd seen. The meeting is scheduled for 2 o'clock. They are 8 miles from the turn when Marcus notices the cruiser in his mirror sitting in the shadow of a billboard and then not sitting anymore. He doesn't say anything. Diane reaches over and turns the podcast volume down without being asked. Troy sees the Range Rover from the pullout, and the thought that fires is not really a thought, it is a reflex, a groove worn deep into the neural pathway by years of repetition, going from expensive car black driver directly to something's wrong without passing through anything resembling evidence or curiosity, or the basic human instinct to wonder before you conclude. He doesn't run the plates. He never runs the plates first because the plates might give him information that complicates the story, and the story is already written before the stop begins. He pulls out with just the lights, no siren, just the silent strobing threat of chosen authority, and rides the bumper aggressively, watching to see if they'll run because running would make everything so much simpler. The Range Rover doesn't run. It signals right cleanly precisely, the blinker clicking 3 deliberate times before the wheel turns and eases to the shoulder with a smoothness that Troy reads as arrogance, but which is actually something else entirely, the controlled movement of people who have a practiced plan for exactly this situation. He parks at the angle that partially blocks his dash cam. He does this the way he adjusts his belt automatically without thought, a habit so deeply embedded it has become invisible even to him. He walks to the passenger side window because the passenger side disorients people, makes them twist away from the threat, puts them at a disadvantage before a word is spoken. He raises his fist and knocks 3 times hard enough that his knuckles sting slightly afterward. He waits. The window descends, and the first thing Troy registers is cold air. The interior of the Range Rover is 30 degrees cooler than the Alabama roadside, and it rolls over him like something closing like a door, being quietly and deliberately shut in his face, like a reminder that these people are comfortable in a way that his presence cannot reach. The woman in the passenger seat turns to look at him. She is wearing a navy blazer and sunglasses, and she looks at him over the rim of them with the flat, professional attention of someone who finished assessing him in the first second and is now simply waiting to observe what he does with himself. Not fear, not hostility, something more unsettling than either complete, unhurried readiness. Troy demands license and registration without stating why he pulled them over. Diane asks in a voice that is entirely level and entirely precise for the legal basis of the stop. Troy invents the air freshener hanging from the rearview mirror. He says obstructed view, and Marcus glances once at the mirror where no air freshener hangs, then returns his eyes to the road ahead without comment, without reaction, which infuriates Troy more than any argument would. Then Troy uses the word. Not screamed, not performed, worse than either of those. It comes out casual and reflexive, the way a man uses a word he has used so many thousands of times that it has lost all weight for him, even as it carries infinite weight for everyone it lands on. There is a half-second of silence in the car. Then Diane's pen moves on her legal pad. 2 words: noted officer. Marcus announces his wallet reach the way an experienced person announces every movement around a volatile officer, calmly, clearly narrating each inch of it. And Troy screams anyway, hand dropping to his weapon with the speed of a man who was already looking for a reason and has decided this one will do. Both Marcus and Diane step out without resistance, because this is a protocol they have rehearsed, not because they are afraid, but because they understand the specific arithmetic of this situation. A volatile officer with his hand on his gun is a problem with a specific solution, and that solution is to remove every possible ambiguity, comply with every lawful order, and trust that the truth has a longer reach than this moment does. Marcus places his hands on the hood of the Range Rover without being told, and the metal is hot enough to be genuinely uncomfortable, and he stays exactly where he is. Troy's search of Marcus is aggressive and intrusive and performative. The search of a man who needs to find something, not because he has reason to believe it's there, but because not finding anything would require him to admit the stop was wrong. And that admission is a door Troy Lassiter has never in 22 years opened. Diane cites a Supreme Court case quietly and precisely, the case that defines exactly when smell-based probable cause applies and when it doesn't. And Troy laughs the specific laugh of a man who has never had a legal citation thrown at him and doesn't recognize a grenade when he hears one. Troy enters the Range Rover. Center console charging cable, granola bar, a Kroger receipt from Atlanta, glovebox Hertz rental agreement, insurance papers, a travel pack of tissues. Under the driver's seat, his hand closes on something cold and mechanical, and his heart hammers against his ribs because he thinks he has found Christmas morning. He pulls the Sig Sauer P320 and holds it over his head and shouts "gun" into the Alabama afternoon, and in this moment Troy Lassiter is the happiest he has been in years, and he does not look at the badge clipped to the holster frame still attached to the seat rail beneath the gun, because looking at it would mean seeing it, and Troy has built a 22-year career on being very deliberate about what he allows himself to see. Backup arrives in a billow of red dust. Deputy Owen Sharp and Officer Chris Walton, doors opening before the vehicles fully stop the practiced urgency of people responding to a colleague's call. Troy is directing them before they reach him, already building the scene the way a director builds a scene, placing everyone where they need to be for the story he has written. Marcus is cuffed. Sharp struggles because Marcus's wrists are large enough that standard cuffs barely close, and Marcus stands absolutely still throughout the process and says clearly and loudly enough for every dash cam rolling in every direction to capture it. "My name is Marcus Beaumont. I am a special agent in charge with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Atlanta Field Office. My badge is in the wallet on the hood. I am not resisting. I am identifying myself as required by law." Sharp looks at Walton. Walton looks at the wallet sitting on the hood. Troy says "fake" with an immediacy that leaves no room for doubt, because if he leaves room for doubt, someone might look, and looking is the one thing he cannot allow right now. Diane is cuffed by Walton, who is already uncertain already. Somewhere else in her head, hands slower than they need to be. Diane looks directly at Walton and says quietly, "Your badge number is on your shoulder, and this stop is on 3 cameras. Whatever you decide to do in the next 60 seconds, decide it knowing both of those things." Walton says nothing, but her hands slow down further. Troy finally picks the wallet off the hood and opens it. The gold shield catches the afternoon light, the way solid brass catches light. Not flashy, not decorative, but deep and certain and heavy with what it means. And beneath it, the federal seal in full color, and beneath that, Marcus J. Beaumont, Special Agent in Charge, FBI Atlanta, clearance TS/SC. I 5 seconds past that age. Troy Lassiter in ways that won't be fully visible for months. He moves to Diane's purse, pulls the second credential case, opens it. Diane A. Beaumont, Senior Federal Prosecutor, U.S. Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division. He closes both wallets. He looks at the empty highway ahead of him, the heat shimmering off the asphalt, a crow on the fence line, the world continuing completely indifferent to what has just happened on this particular stretch of shoulder. Take them in, he says. The two most expensive words of his professional life, delivered in a voice that is already somewhere underneath, where he can hear it beginning to understand exactly what they cost. Troy arrives at the station ahead of the cruiser, carrying Marcus and Diane because he drove fast and because he needed the time needed to stand at the booking desk and build the narrative before the subjects of the narrative could walk through the door and complicate it with their existence. Sergeant Frank is a man who has been mentally retired since approximately 2018 and has insulated himself from the question of right and wrong by focusing very precisely on procedure, and Troy knows this, which is why he leads with procedure. High-value stop possible trafficking. Federal IDs that don't check out, process them separately, maximum protocol, no calls until identities are verified. Frank writes what he's told. He has always written what he's told. Chief Dale Pruitt comes in from his office with the unhurried movement of a man who has assessed situations for long enough that he begins assessing them before he fully enters the room. He looks at the badges on the counter. He looks at Troy. He looks at the badges again. Pruitt is not a good man, but he is an experienced one, and experienced men recognize the smell of something gone badly wrong even when they don't want to. He doesn't say anything yet. Saying something would require him to act on it, and acting would cost him something, and Pruitt's entire professional life has been organized around minimizing cost. When Marcus and Diane are brought in, still cuffed, walked in by Sharp, the room reorganizes itself around them in that subtle, immediate way that rooms reorganize around presences they weren't expecting. Marcus walks with his head level and his hands behind his back, and none of it looks like submission because none of it is deliberate, chosen posture. The movement of a man who has decided exactly how he is going to conduct himself in this room and is conducting himself that way. Troy watches them enter and tells himself he has this handled, he does not have this handled. The strip search demand comes from Troy's mouth in the register of a routine request, the tone of a man ordering something he has ordered before and expects to receive without discussion, and the room goes still in a way that is different from ordinary quiet. Officer Chris Walton stands up from her desk. She doesn't make a speech. She simply stands, crosses her arms, plants her feet, and says, "No," clearly, without decoration, stating her reason directly. There is no basis for it. There is no evidence supporting it. She will not participate, and she is stating her refusal on the record. She has 2 daughters. She has been watching Troy operate in this department for 3 years. This is the line she has been drawing toward for a long time, and she draws it here. Troy turns on her with the fury of a man who has never had a subordinate refuse him anything. He calls it insubordination and raises his voice, and the room holds its breath at the genuine possibility that he might find a way to make her comply. Deputy Owen Sharp is standing near the far wall, hand resting on his belt, watching Troy, the way a man watches something he knows is wrong but hasn't yet found the courage to say is wrong. Troy looks at him, the look of a commanding officer expecting a soldier to fall in line. Marcus, standing at the booking counter, does not look at Sharp. He looks straight ahead. But he is aware of Sharp, the way Marcus is aware of everything in every room he occupies, which is completely. 3 seconds pass. Sharp looks at the floor. He does not help Troy, and he does not stop him. and he will carry the specific weight of that inaction for a long time. But in this moment, he does the smallest possible version of something better than nothing. He stays out of it. Pruitt ends the standoff, not because it's wrong, but because it's a liability, which is the only language Pruitt has ever spoken with real fluency, and tells Troy to stand down, and his voice has the flat quality of arithmetic rather than morality. And every person in the room hears the difference and understands exactly what it means about the man giving the order. Diane has not stopped writing. Name, badge number, time verbatim phrasing. Her pen moves at a steady, unbroken pace across the legal pad while the room churns around her. At 14:47, she writes, "Strip search demanded, no basis stated, overruled by Chief Pruitt Officer K. Walton, refused and objected verbally on record." She underlines Walton's name once, not as accusation, as distinction. Pruitt takes Marcus and Diane into the conference room, which is also the break room because Millhaven PD does not have a dedicated space for conversations of this magnitude and attempts to establish control with the authority of a man who has always been the most powerful person at any table he sits at. Marcus lets him open. He sits across from Pruitt with his hands folded on the table, and he looks at the room slowly. The camera in the corner, the window, the door frame, the position of every other person in the adjacent space, cataloging it with the practiced eye of someone who has been reading rooms as crime scenes for 23 years. Then he says the sentence that Pruitt will hear in his sleep. He names the Whitmore kickback scheme. He names Pruitt directly. He names Judge Stoneham. And then he says, "We were 8 miles from our contact inside this department when Officer Lassiter initiated the stop." He lets the silence sit. "Check the phone," he says. "Not yours. Mine." In the evidence bag. There's a call log you'll find interesting. Troy, standing in the doorway, says he's lying. He says it with the flat conviction of a man who needs it to be true rather than a man who has reason to believe it is. Marcus doesn't look at Troy. He looks at Pruitt. And Pruitt, who has been running numbers since the moment the badges appeared, finally looks back at Marcus and allows himself to see what he has been carefully not seeing since the cruiser called in. The stop. The math on this situation has exactly one answer, and the answer is not in Troy Lassiter's favor, or in Pruitt's, or in Millhaven's, or in any of the arrangements that have made this town operate the way it has operated for 22 years. Pruitt's hand moves toward his radio. Troy watches it move. The wheel is stopping. Marcus and Diane are placed in separate holding cells because Pruitt doesn't know what to do with them, and processing buys him time to think, and buying time is the only play he has left that doesn't immediately accelerate the collapse. Diane's cell smells like pine cleaner and rust, and something older and more permanent underneath both. The bench is welded steel with no padding. She sits, opens her notebook across her knee, and keeps writing because there is no version of Diane Beaumont that stops gathering evidence simply because she is temporarily inconvenienced by a cage. Marcus's cell is down the hall. He sits on the floor rather than the bench, not as a statement, just because the floor is cooler and he can feel the building through the soles of his feet, the HVAC vibration. The footsteps of officers on the floor above old training. The habit of reading a space through your body rather than only your eyes. Through the bars and down the corridor, he can see the shadow of Diane's figure thrown on the opposite wall by the fluorescent light in her cell, the shape of her bent over the legal pad, the pen moving the silhouette of someone working, always working even here. He watches it for a moment, and then he allows himself something that doesn't belong to his professional self, a breath that goes all the way down, eyes closing slowly, the full weight of what happened on that roadside settling onto him like a physical thing, the gun coming up the cuffs, going on the specific word Troy used, dropping into the car's cool air, the way something toxic drops into water, and Diane's hand pausing for a fraction of a second before continuing. He has carried the image of that half-second pause since the moment it happened. 2 seconds. Then it passes. He opens his eyes, and the floor is telling him there are 2 people moving on the level above, and he files it. And he is an agent again. Troy walks past the cells on his way to the break room, gas station, sandwich in hand, and does not look in. Deliberately, consciously, he does not look in because looking in would mean seeing them as they actually are. And Troy Lassiter has survived 47 years by being very careful about what he allows himself to see. While Troy sleeps, the world is moving. Troy eats at his desk, calls his wife, and tells her he made a significant arrest in a voice that expects to be impressed. Calls his friend Ray at the Rusty Nail and tells the story better the second time, with more detail and color. The gun discovery expanded into something almost cinematic. Ray says, "Damn," at the appropriate intervals. Troy leans back in his chair boots on the corner of the desk and feels the specific warmth of a man whose version of himself is being confirmed by someone who won't challenge it. He does not call Gerald Whitmore too traceable, but he thinks about the envelope and thinks it might be thicker than usual this cycle given the size of what he pulled over. He goes to the bathroom and looks in the mirror, and for one unguarded second, the version of himself that knows the truth looks back, the one who clocked the badge weight, who heard Diane cite the court case and felt the floor shift beneath him. And then he blinks, and the other Troy is back, and everything is fine. He returns to his desk. The badge on his chest catches the fluorescent light and throws it back clean and bright, and Troy closes his eyes and is at peace completely, and genuinely at peace for the last time in his life. 200 feet away in a holding cell that smells of rust and disinfectant, Marcus dials from memory. 2 rings. Downs. Alert dry, already awake. It's Marcus. Millhaven PD, Coulter County. Code red. Lassiter initiated the stop, recovered my service weapon. Diane is secure. We haven't been harmed. I need the team. A pause, the exact length of a person shifting from receiving to deploying. We're already moving. The van's been on station 4 months. How long do you need? Give me the morning. I want him to sleep well tonight. Copy. The line closes. Marcus thanks the officer on duty by name because Marcus always notices names. Hands the phone back through the bars, walks to his cell, lies down, and goes to sleep. Actual, untroubled sleep. The sleep of a man who has done everything tonight that can be done tonight and knows that the morning belongs to something larger and more prepared than one bad cop in a small Alabama town. Diane feels at first a low vibration through the concrete floor, constant, and building the kind of frequency the body registers before the brain catches up to it, and she is already sitting up on the bench with the pen in her hand before she fully understands what she's hearing. Helicopters. More than one. Close and getting closer. Troy snaps awake at his desk. The sandwich wrapper slides off his chest, which is the most undignified he has looked in years, and he doesn't know it yet, and his boots hit the floor, and he is at the window before the thought fully forms, and what he sees outside stops him as completely as a wall. 3 black FBI Suburbans moving down Main Street in convoy. 2 Alabama State Trooper vehicles flanking them. An armored communications van with satellite equipment already deployed and running on the roof. And walking at the center of all of it, moving with the unhurried total precision of someone who has done this in more dangerous places than Millhaven, Alabama, on more important mornings than this one, is AD. Patricia Downs in a gray suit that costs more than Troy's truck and carries itself like it knows. The Sallyport speaker clicks on. This is the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Open the gate or we will breach it in 30 seconds. This is not a request. Pruitt's hands are almost steady when he hits the button. The gate rolls up and morning light floods in, and with it, the sound of something that has been building for 4 months finally arriving at the place where it was always going. Troy looks around the room for an ally. A face, any face that will tell him this can still be managed, and what he finds is Walton looking at the wall, Frank looking at his desk, and Sharp standing near the back with his hands visible and his face carrying the expression of a man who made a choice last night and is living inside it this morning. The tactical team moves through the booking room in the efficient, quiet formation of people who have done this in buildings with active threats and are therefore not impressed by a small Alabama police station. 6 agents, weapons holstered, but hands ready, sweeping the space the way they were trained to sweep it. AD. Downs follows them in and surveys the room with the clinical attention of someone looking for what needs to be addressed first. She asks one question: "Where are they?" Walton points. Not with words, just a finger aimed down the corridor. The cells open. Marcus rises from the floor, brushes concrete dust from his jeans with a gesture so ordinary and unhurried that it makes the entire weight of the previous 14 hours visible by contrast. Diane closes her notebook and stands. "Down, sir, ma'am." "Status." "Marcus, we're good. Situation is contained." Diane holds up the notebook. 14 hours of documentation. I'll need a scanner." Downs turns to the room, to Pruitt, to Frank, to the assembled officers of the Millhaven Police Department, and her voice carries the flat authority of someone who has taken apart larger operations than this one and found the work unremarkable. This building is now a federal crime scene. Nobody leaves. Nobody calls. Nobody touches a file, a camera feed, or a hard drive. If you attempt to delete, move, or alter anything in this building, I will personally add obstruction to whatever you're already carrying. Are there questions? There are no questions. The tactical agents turn to Troy. He tries. The stop was legal. He was acting suspicious. I followed every procedure. Nobody in the room responds to this. Downs nods at two agents, and the hands close on Troy's arms before he fully processes what is happening, and he is turned around and cuffed. And the words keep coming. I was doing my job. The badges could have been fake. I had cause, and nobody is listening, because the time for those words was last night, and last night Troy was sleeping at his desk with his badge catching the fluorescent light. He has walked out through the booking room and into the morning, and as he passes the corridor that leads to the holding cells, Marcus and Diane are walking the other direction, free, unhurried, moving toward the exit with the easy pace of people who have somewhere to be. The physical fact of it is as plain and devastating as a sentence they are going forward. Troy is going the other way. Outside news cameras are already assembling, not because the FBI called anyone, but because 3 federal Suburbans and a helicopter before sunrise in Millhaven, Alabama are not something that goes unnoticed by the 2 people in town who still have working police scanners. The footage of Troy Lassiter being walked out of his own station badge, listen his straining uniform hands behind his back, will be on every screen in America before noon. Marcus stands by the Range Rover and watches the transport vehicle close its doors on Troy. He doesn't speak. He watches the way you watch something that needed to happen finally happen, with a feeling that is not triumph and not satisfaction, and is something quieter and more serious than either the feeling of a long piece of work reaching its last page. The federal courthouse in Birmingham is cold marble and precise lighting, and hallways wide enough to breathe in, and the contrast with Millhaven is not accidental. It is architectural argument, the building itself making a case about what justice looks like when it is functioning correctly. Troy Lassiter sits at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit that is 2 sizes too large because he has lost weight in the 3 months since the arrest, and nobody adjusted the uniform when it was issued. He used to press his own uniform until it had creases like blade edges. The distance between that man and this one is a visible physical fact. His court-appointed lawyer, Greg Finch, has filed a suppression motion arguing the dashcam audio was altered and that Marcus and Diane were federal provocateurs who engineered the stop. These are the arguments of a man building a case from whatever materials are available rather than whatever materials are correct. Prosecutor David Alcott. Quiet, dark suit, the courtroom manner of someone who knows his evidence will do the performing, rises and tells Judge Elena Marcus Carter that the government will oppose the suppression motion and would like to call a witness. The government calls Officer Troy Lassiter. Finch half rises. Your Honor, my client has Fifth Amendment. Mr. Lassiter filed an affidavit last week attesting to the legitimacy of the stop, Alcott says evenly. He has already provided sworn testimony about the events of that afternoon. The government is simply asking him to affirm it under cross-examination. Judge Carter looks at Troy over her reading glasses. Mr. Lassiter, you may exercise your right to remain silent, in which case your prior affidavit stands as your sworn account. or you may take the stand. Your choice. Troy looks at Finch. Finch's expression says, "Don't." Troy's expression says, "I need to control this narrative." He stands up. He walks to the witness stand. He has been the most authoritative person in every room he has entered for 22 years, and some habits are harder to break than others. He is sworn in. He settles into the chair with the unconscious authority of a man who is used to being believed. Alcott approaches the podium. "Officer Lassiter, in your affidavit, you stated that you initiated the stop because, and I'm quoting directly, you observed the vehicle's air freshener creating an obstructed view from the driver's seat. Is that accurate?" "That's accurate," Troy says. "You are certain an air freshener was present and visible from your position outside the vehicle?" "I'm certain." Alcott nods slowly. He reaches to his table and lifts a printed document. "Your Honor, Government Exhibit 14, the Hertz rental agreement for the vehicle in question, a 2023 Range Rover Sport contract number HZ9847. Alabama issued at Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson Airport 3 days before the stop." He walks the document to the bench, then to Finch, then places a copy on the ledge of the witness stand directly in front of Troy. "Mr. Lassiter, can you read the vehicle configuration notes in Section 4, Line 3? Troy looks at the document. His jaw tightens slightly. It says, "Interior package premium. No accessories added." No accessories. Now Government Exhibit 15. Another document. "This is the Hertz vehicle inspection report completed when the car was returned 4 days after the stop. Under interior condition, the inspector notes no modifications, no additions, factory configuration confirmed." Alcott pauses. "Mr. Lassiter, Hertz documents every single item present in their vehicles at contract and at return, specifically to resolve disputes about damage and modifications. According to 2 independent Hertz records, there was no air freshener in that vehicle, not when it was rented, not when it was returned." He looks at Troy with the patience of a man who has already won and is simply waiting for the room to catch up. "So I'll ask you again, are you certain an air freshener was present and visible in that vehicle?" The courtroom is very quiet. Troy's eyes move to Finch. Finch is staring at the table. "I may have been mistaken about the specific item," Troy says. The view was still obstructed. "By what?" A pause that lasts 3 seconds and contains 22 years. "I don't recall the specific item at this moment." "You don't recall." Alcott lets that sit in the room. "Mr. Lassiter, let's move to Exhibit 16. He lifts a thick-bound document. "This is your complete traffic stop record for the past 5 years, subpoenaed from the Millhaven Police Department Records Division, 847 stops. I've had my office run the demographic breakdown." He opens the document to a tabbed page. Of those stops, 71% involved black drivers, despite black drivers representing 23% of through traffic on that corridor as measured by the state DOT's sensor data for the same period, which is Exhibit 17. He looks up from the document. "Do you dispute those numbers?" "I stop who?" "I stop," Troy says. "I don't keep a tally." "Someone did," Alcott says, quietly. He closes the document. No further questions. The suppression motion is denied before the lunch break. Judge Carter doesn't need the afternoon. Whitmore doesn't look like anyone's idea of a villain, which is precisely why he has been one so successfully for so long. He is 61, soft-featured, silver-haired, moving to the stand with the slightly pained deliberateness of a man whose knees have been bothering him for years. He looks like someone's grandfather. He is about to destroy Troy Lassiter in order to preserve what remains of himself, which makes him something that doesn't have a polite name. Under Alcott's questions, Whitmore explains the arrangement without decoration, because his cooperation agreement requires plain language, and he has learned in 3 months of cooperation that plain language is the fastest path to the reduced sentence he needs. He paid Troy Lassiter to generate stops. The targets were black drivers in late-model vehicles because the insurance settlements were larger, and because Whitmore pauses, and it is the most honest pause he has ever made in any courtroom, they were considered less likely to have the resources to challenge it. He says this quietly. The quiet is worse than anything louder would have been. He names the envelope system, the 2-week cycle, the amounts kept below reporting thresholds. He names 6 specific stops he personally requested stops where he already had a client relationship positioned with the driver and needed Troy to supply the legal basis for the encounter. And then unprompted, he says a name, Gloria Carter, 44 years old, who spent 2 nights in Millhaven County Jail following a Troy Lassiter stop, who lost her job at the school district because of the missed days, who has not fully recovered what those 2 nights cost her. Gloria Carter is not in this courtroom, but her name is in it now with official weight behind it, and the jury hears it and understands the way people understand things they already knew but needed someone credentialed to confirm that this was never about one bad stop or one bad cop. This was a structure built on the assumption that certain people had no way to fight back. Troy's lawyer does not cross-examine Whitmore. There is a long pause after Alcott sits, and then Finch says, "No questions, Your Honor," and Whitmore walks off the stand with his head down, and Troy watches him go with an expression that is, for the first time in these proceedings, recognizably human, the expression of a man who has just seen that what he called loyalty was a transaction, and the other party has settled the account and left. Alcott calls Diane Beaumont as his final witness. She cannot prosecute this case. She is a victim in it, but she can testify, and the testimony she offers is the testimony of a federal prosecutor who has spent 14 years studying the architecture of exactly what happened in Millhaven, who documented it in real time in a holding cell while it was still happening, and who knows these numbers the way other people know their own phone numbers. She takes the stand in a fresh blazer notebook closed on her lap, completely prepared. Troy's lawyer tries the only angle he has left. Wasn't their composure itself evidence of a setup? Weren't they trained to provoke this response? Wasn't Troy simply reacting to a situation the FBI manufactured? Diane looks at Finch with the patience of someone who has heard weaker arguments than this and treated them with appropriate respect, and will do the same here. "Counselor," she says, "my brother and I signaled, pulled over, placed our hands on the wheel, announced every movement, provided identification upon request, and cited the applicable case law for the search. If that sequence of events provokes a police officer into a civil rights violation, the problem is not the sequence of events." She turns to the jury. Then, not dramatically, not performing, just turning to face the people she is actually talking to. "I've spent 14 years prosecuting cases in this division. I know what this pattern looks like when it's woven into a department's culture. Troy Lassiter didn't have a bad day on that highway. He had a routine day. The only thing unusual about it was who he happened to pull over." She steps down. The room holds the silence for a moment longer than it needs to, and then Alcott says the government rests, and Finch says the defense rests, and Judge Carter looks at the clock and tells the jury they'll begin deliberations in the morning. The jury deliberates for 2 hours and 50 minutes. The extra 50 minutes beyond the first 2 hours is them being thorough, reading the instructions a second time, going through each count carefully, making sure they have done it correctly, rather than any genuine uncertainty about where they land. The verdicts arrive one at a time in the flat official voice of a clerk who has read hundreds of these and applies the same careful neutrality to all of them. Deprivation of rights under color of law, guilty. Conspiracy to commit extortion, guilty. Filing false police reports, guilty. Assault upon a federal officer, guilty. Troy goes still when the first one lands and stays still for all the rest. No collapse, no tears, no dramatic physical response. He goes still the way a system goes still when its power is cut. Not peaceful, not resigned, just absent. The operating process is terminated, nothing left running. He built no contingency for this moment because he genuinely never believed it was possible, and now that it's here, he has no protocol, no story, no role to play. The others fall in the following weeks. Whitmore 12 years with cooperation, credit applied, likely to serve 8. Stoneham 18 years, no cooperation, mandatory minimums enforced without sympathy. Teague, who resigned before indictment and took a plea for 5 years, whose mugshot appears on every Alabama front page long enough for people to clip it and keep it. The sentencing judge is the Honorable Evelyn Carter, 63 years old, who grew up 40 miles from Millhaven and drove through it many times in her life and knows exactly what kind of town it is and always has been. She does not share this from the bench. She doesn't need to. She looks at Troy Lassiter with the particular clarity of someone who has spent a career translating what the law says into what it means for the people it is supposed to protect. And what it means here is not abstract. She does not perform anger. She performs precision. She walks through each count, each victim named in the pre-sentencing report. And when she reaches Leroy Simmons, she says his name in a federal courtroom with official weight behind it, which is the first time any institution has acknowledged formally that what happened to him was wrong. Troy attempts a statement. He says he was doing his job, that he believed in what he was doing, that the system placed him in situations where these were the choices available. Judge Carter listens to every word without interrupting. When he finishes, she says the most dangerous thing a person can be is certain. You were certain about who Marcus Beaumont was before you ever saw his face. That certainty cost you everything, and it cost dozens of people their dignity, their property, and in some cases, their freedom. The law does not grade on certainty, it grades on truth. Troy Lassiter receives 28 years, no possibility of parole for 20. His pension is forfeited. Civil asset forfeiture is applied to his accounts and property. He leaves this courtroom with the jumpsuit on his back and 28 years in front of him. As the marshals turn him toward the side door, Troy looks back at the gallery. Marcus is in the front row watching, not with triumph, not with satisfaction, with that same steady, unreadable patience he had on the roadside, and Troy looks away first. He has always been the one to look away from things that told him the truth. FCI Talladega has a sound that reaches you before you understand what you're hearing. A dense, layered sound of metal and concrete and compressed human proximity, and it hits Troy the moment the transport doors open. Physical and total, the sound of a world that has its own rules and is not interested in his. The intake process happens to him rather than with him. His civilian clothes are taken, the last physical proof of a life organized around personal choices and in their place. The institutional green stiff from industrial washing, smelling of something chemical that never fully resolves. He is issued a number. He has had a badge number for 22 years. But this number is different in a way he feels. Before he can articulate that number meant I carry authority. This one means I am accounted for. The intake officer is Guard Darnell Webb, 29, from Birmingham, who processes Troy with the same professional efficiency he applies to every intake, checking boxes, confirming information, issuing supplies, and who says nothing extra because nothing extra is needed. The silence between them contains everything that needs to be said. Troy asks for protective custody. He says he was law enforcement, says he needs separation, says the general population will know who he is. Webb looks at him with an expression that is not cruel and not sympathetic, just even PC units full. Keep your head down and your mouth shut. The walk to cell block C takes 4 minutes. Troy counts them. Troy's cellmate is a quiet man named Roy, 52, serving 11 years for wire fraud, who has read every book in the prison library at least twice and is working through them a third time with annotations. Roy looks at Troy once when he arrives a brief, complete assessment and returns to his book without another word. Roy already knows who Troy is because everyone already knows, and Roy wants no part of whatever Troy is carrying into this cell. Lights out at 10. Troy lies on the top bunk and stares at the concrete overhead and does the thing he has done every night of his working life, replays the day. But tonight, the reel is 22 years long and plays whether he wants it to or not. He sees the Range Rover, the turn signal clicking 3 clean times before the wheel moved, and for the first time since the roadside, he asks himself the question he has been running from. What did I actually see when I saw that car? Not the story he built, not the reflex. What did he actually see in the fraction of a second before all of it fired? He knows the answer. The knowing settles onto his chest in the dark and does not lift. At 2 in the morning, he gets up and stands at the bars and looks at the narrow strip of sky visible through the high slit window, one star, maybe a planet, impossible to tell from here. He allows himself the only completely honest thought he has had in years: I was wrong. Not about the arrest, not about the badge, not about the trial, about the entire architecture of what he believed about the road, about the people on it, about himself, and what the badge meant, and what it gave him the right to do. All of it. Wrong. He goes back to the bunk and lies with the thought, getting acquainted with it, because it is the only true thing in the cell, and it is not going anywhere. 3 months in, and Troy is on cafeteria detail mopping the floor after dinner work that empties the mind and fills the body with a useful exhaustion when the wall-mounted TV runs a news segment he almost doesn't look up for. The Alabama Civil Rights Legal Initiative, funded in part by asset forfeiture, proceeds from the Millhaven case, has opened free legal aid clinics in 3 counties. The footage shows people walking through glass doors, filling out forms at folding tables, sitting with advocates who are listening to them, actually listening, and some of them are crying in a way that is clearly relief rather than grief. They are people who have been through something they didn't have the words or the resources to fight, and now there is a room they can walk into. Troy stops moving. He watches the screen. He recognizes the county. He has made stops there. He looks down at his chest. The green uniform, the stenciled number, nothing else. The morning ritual of lifting the badge and checking his reflection in it is gone so completely it might have belonged to a different person. There is nothing to polish. There is no reflection to check. There is only the mop and the wet sound of work that covers the same ground over and over. He picks the mop back up. Webb says his number from the doorway. "Yes, sir," Troy says. And the words coming from his mouth, directed that way, cost him something real. But he says them. Marcus drives himself to FCI Talladega in a rental car, not a government vehicle, no credentials on the dash, nothing marking him as anything other than a man going to visit someone wearing jeans and a dark blue button-down and comfortable shoes, because he is not here to perform power. He has used all the power that needed to be used. What remains is a conversation that should happen between the 2 people who were actually on that road. The visitation room is fluorescent and divided and smells of institutional coffee and industrial cleaner, and Marcus sits at the assigned table and waits, which he is very good at. Troy comes in, and the first thing Marcus registers is the weight he has lost. Not in a way that looks like health, in the way that happens when the thing a person organized themselves around is removed, and the body, uncertain what to do with the space, simply becomes less. He sits across from Marcus, and neither speaks immediately, and the silence is not hostile, just honest. 2 people who have covered a significant distance since a gravel roadside in July. Marcus slides the cooperation agreement across the table. Troy looks at it without picking it up. Marcus explains there is a state legislator who helped draft the civil forfeiture statute that made the Whitmore scheme legally viable. Someone above Stoneham, above Teague. Someone whose fingerprints are on the underlying structure, but who has not yet been reached. Troy was present at meetings he didn't understand, were meetings. He knows things he doesn't know, he knows. Troy asks why Marcus came himself rather than sending someone else. Marcus is quiet for a moment, not performing consideration, but actually engaged in it. Then, "Because I was on that road, and I think this conversation should happen between the 2 people who were actually there." Troy looks at the document for a long time. Marcus does not fill the silence, because this silence is part of the work, the space where a person has to sit with a choice rather than being guided into or away from it. Troy thinks about Whitmore, who returned his calls for 7 years and has not returned one since the arrest. He thinks about Pruitt, currently in cooperation proceedings himself, his lawyer making him as useful as possible to people who last month were his enemies. He thinks about the loyalty he organized his professional life around, and how absent it was, how specifically, measurably, completely absent the first moment it was tested against real consequence. He picks up the pen. His handwriting is smaller than it used to be, the way handwriting gets when a person has been reduced. He signs without ceremony. Before the guard signals the end of the visit, Troy says something he has clearly been deciding for the length of the entire conversation. "When I saw you pull over, I clocked it. Clean signal, legal speed. Both hands visible the whole time. I noticed all of it." He pauses. "I still pulled you over." Marcus stands and buttons his shirt at the collar. He looks down at Troy, not with pity, not with contempt, with the clear level attention of someone closing a chapter that needed closing. "I know," he says. "That's the whole thing, Troy. That's exactly what the whole thing was about." He walks out. Troy sits a moment longer, looking at the empty chair across from him, before the guard says his number, and it is time to go back. Millhaven, 1 year later, is the same town in most of the ways that matter to the people who live there. The diner is open. When Patty feels like opening it, the hardware store closes. When Raymond's back gives out, the churches outnumber everything else. But the power geography has shifted quietly and permanently, the way a landscape shifts after water finds a new path through it and then deepens that path by moving through it again and again. Whitmore's billboard came down 6 weeks after the arrest. The lot where it stood has been empty long enough that someone planted a small vegetable garden in the corner of it. Tomatoes, mostly some peppers, a row of collard greens along the fence, and they didn't do it as a statement, just because the land was available and the soil looked workable, and it seemed like a waste to leave it doing nothing. The police department operates under federal oversight, every traffic stop recorded and reviewed by an independent monitor, demographic data compiled monthly and posted publicly, the complaint process rebuilt from scratch. The stop rate has dropped by 60%. The department is smaller. The officers who remain are doing the job the way most of them wanted to do it when they started, without the weight of what Troy built pressing down on everything from above. Leroy Simmons gets his truck back, not through a large program or a high-profile lawsuit, but through a law student working the DOJ-funded clinic who found his file in a stack of civil forfeiture cases and spent 3 weeks building the argument. The forfeiture is ruled unconstitutional as applied to his stop. The truck is returned with a written letter of apology from the county that Leroy frames and hangs on his garage wall, not because he's proud of what happened, but because he wants his grandchildren to see it. He wants them to know it happened. And then he wants them to know it changed. He needs them to understand that both things are true and that neither one cancels the other out. Officer Chris Walton is now the senior officer at Millhaven PD. She had a 2-hour conversation with Diane Beaumont 6 weeks after the arrest, the content of which she has never shared with anyone. Her work in the year since has said everything that conversation needed to say. 6 months after sentencing, the Department of Justice holds an internal ceremony in a conference room in Washington, not the televised kind, just the real kind, with bad coffee and good colleagues and the particular warmth of people who know exactly what the work actually involved. Marcus and Diane received the Attorney General's Award for Distinguished Service. The citation uses the word composure in describing what they demonstrated on the Alabama roadside in the holding cell and throughout, and when the Attorney General reads it aloud. Diane glances at Marcus, and Marcus looks at the ceiling for exactly 1 second, which is their version of laughing at something together, and nobody in the room is meant to see it. Afterward, walking to the parking structure, Diane asks something she has been holding for nearly a year. "What did you think about that first night in the cell?" "After you called Downs." Marcus considers it honestly for a moment. "Leroy Simmons," he says. "I read his file 4 months before the stop. I kept thinking about what that stop was like for him. No badge in his wallet, no number to call. Just the stop, and then the loss, and then nobody official acknowledging that either thing happened." He looks at the parking structure entrance. "That's why you do it the long way. We could have shown the credentials on the roadside and ended it in 30 seconds. But then it's one bad cop on one Tuesday. Do it the long way, let the whole thing build, and maybe the next Leroy Simmons has a clinic to walk into." Diane nods. She already knew the answer. She just wanted to hear him say it. They get in the car. Another assignment is waiting. There is always another assignment waiting, and they pull out into the afternoon light and drive. Every morning for 22 years, Troy Lassiter lifted his badge and polished it with the corner of his shirt and held it up and checked his reflection in it. And the man looking back confirmed something he needed. Confirmed that the badge was the thing that it was, what made him real. That it was the line between him and everyone. He stopped. That badge is in an evidence lockup in Birmingham now. It is not coming back. And what Troy is left with in a 6x8 cell in Talladega is the question of who he is without it, a question that is hard and necessary, and the first honest thing he has faced in decades. Justice isn't always a transformation. Sometimes it is simply a man running out of room to hide from himself, and the walls finally close in close enough that the hiding has to stop. Most of us watching this story don't have a badge. But most of us know the smaller versions of what happened on that Alabama road the moment someone decided who you were before you opened your mouth. The room you walked into where the decision was already made. And if we are honest with ourselves, most of us also know the other side. The moment we made a snap decision about someone based on something that wasn't evidence and moved on before we ever found out if we were right. Marcus and Diane didn't beat the system from the outside. They trusted it, used it correctly, documented everything, and stayed calm enough to let the truth have room to work. That is not a superpower. It is a choice. And it is available to anyone who is willing to take the long way and do the hard thing and trust that the truth, given enough room and enough time, reaches further than any shortcut. On a highway outside Millhaven on a Tuesday afternoon that looks a lot like the Tuesday this story started on, Leroy Simmons is driving his truck. His company name is on the door. His grandfather's name is on the tailgate. The road is paved. The light is good. He is going exactly where he wants to go. That's the whole story. That's the only ending that matters. If this one stayed with you, if it reminded you of a road you've been on or someone you know or something you've been carrying for a while, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to our channel so you don't miss what comes next. Drop a comment below and tell us if you were Marcus on that roadside, what would have been the hardest part of staying calm. We read every single one.